Hi, I'm Jane Whitten, the creator of Knitting Our Roots, which is installed on Connaught Square. And yes, they are hand knit, every stitch. There's about 300 hours of work in those. About 250 of those were the actual knitting. I'm a fairly fast knitter, but I did my shoulder in, and with the help of a good physio, was able to get them completed. So Knitting Our Roots is about our need to set down roots, and it's also about our use of materials and the choices we make for economic or social or environmental reasons. Many of us are wanderers, and some of us still wander. I certainly have been, as I root and uproot and reroute myself around the world in search of a home I want to be in for a while. And one of the things I can carry with me is my skill of knitting. And it's certainly been great as I move from one chair to the next, one home to the next, one meeting to the next. And whether I'm creating functional items like hats and mitts to keep people warm and dry, or whether I'm doing my dysfunctional work, knitting becomes a very rhythmic, meditative sort of process that keeps me grounded. And I think many knitters would agree with me that during this time of COVID, it's been a really valuable skill to be able to have. If we look at the different trees that I've installed the roots on, the first one is the American elm down on the pathway. It's a tree number 3495. It's on the pathway in the square itself. So traditionally, households would have grown their own yarns, grown their own sheep and then processed it and made their own yarns. And this was labor intensive and time intensive, and done out of necessity, not out of choice. Gradually, woolen mills such as Briggs and Little in New Brunswick, and on PER we had McCausland's and Condon's for a while there. This made things a little bit more accessible and easier, and you could drop off your fleece and pick it up in equivalent in blankets or in yarns already spun for you. If you go by this tree on a wet day, it's going to smell like an old sheep because it's made out of 100% wool from Briggs and Little, and it's actually stuffed with some of their fleece. The next step would be to go over to the white ash over on the Sydney Street side of the square. So it's tree number 3494. It's made out of red heart acrylic, because then what happened is acrylic yarns were developed, and they certainly made a big difference to the mass production of garments. And they not only were convenient because you could just toss them in the washer and dryer, but they also became a bit of a symbol of prosperity, because for those people who couldn't afford to buy them, they still had to wear hand knit. And also impacted the skills of knitting, that many people were no longer knitting. And I remember going to university in Newfoundland that in residence the young women didn't know how to knit, but they'd been told they didn't have to know how to knit anymore. So acrylic yarn had made a major change in their lives. But those of us who did use it, red heart acrylic became a great go-to. And that's what this tree is made out of, is the red heart acrylic. And it's pretty tough. It doesn't seem to show any wear and tear during the weather at all. The third tree is the Norway maple, tree number 3540. It's up on the panel side of the square. And what's happened now is we're finally beginning to realize that our overproduction and our misuse of resources and our stockpiling of garbage is really impacting the health and welfare of the planet. And so we're making some different choices. Many people are going back to the natural fibers when they can, and other fibers are being designed and created. And one of them is Woolen the Gang's New Wave, which is actually a core of cotton, but the inside of the core is a fiber that's been made out of recycled plastic bottles.